Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Ward. Here. Commissioner Ignacio.
Here.
Commissioner Bazzani.
Here.
Commissioner Rosenberg.
Here.
And we have two commissioners being sworn in today. John Huff is here, and Ted Williams.
Here.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Public expression. Carmel, you have anything for public expression? Okay. Just record know that there's no one in the audience for public expression other than Carmel. We'll move on to other business. 3A, announcement, appointment, and oath of office. Is that you, Beth, or is that who's going to do that?
Or, I mean, I can do the oath, but
You're going to do the oath?
you're going to announce.
So we have two new members to announce. We have John Huff, who is our special district representative from Mendocino Coast Recreation and Park District. And then we also have Ted Williams, who is a county supervisor, and he is our alternate commissioner.
And the county people reappointed.
Oh, and a reappointment of Supervisor Brown and Supervisor McCowan for commissioners. And the City Select Committee will be meeting this afternoon to make the remaining two appointments for the city members.
Okay.
Now we're ready to do the oath.
Proceed.
Would you, John, please come up here? Scott, can you hear me at the podium? Thank you. And go ahead and bring your oath, please.
Do you?
We have to get sworn in too?
No, we just continue because you
Okay.
haven't dropped your service.
Yeah, I didn't
If you'd
have
like
to
to come
when I
over
got
to the mic.
redone too. So,
I just
right,
let you read
right.
it. It's a little bit faster and less traumatizing.
You ready?
Yeah.
I, Ted Williams, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely without mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties which I am about to enter, in testimony whereof I have affixed my hand. Is that
You all done?
subscribed and sworn? Yeah.
That's good. Congratulations. Welcome to
Thank
LAFCO.
you.
I'll take that for you. I'll get them signed.
next. I,
John Huff, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties which I'm about to enter. For you.
Congratulations. Thank you. There's a pen right there. Yep. Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, John.
Ted, even though you're an alternate, we encourage participation in all the discussions, so feel free to ask questions or give you any input you need. Okay, we'll move on to item 3B, selection of officers and appointments to committees. Uma, how did we normally do that? We just take the nominations now, or do you want to conduct it? How do you want to do it?
I think you open up for nominations for a chair. Commissioner McCowan has.
Thank you. I truly appreciate the work that Jerry Ward has done as our chair and treasurer. However, I do think rotation in office can be healthy, and I do think it's probably a better practice if we have one individual hold one office. So, and Jerry does a great job as treasurer. So with that in mind, I would nominate Carrie Brown as chair. Well, if no one likes that, I would nominate Carrie Brown as chair, Tony Orth as vice chair, and Gerald Ward as treasurer.
I'll second, sure. I'll second.
I'm not sure who, I guess that would be me. So we would, do we take a roll call? Is that how it's normally done?
I think we asked if there's any other.
Is there any
nominations.
discussion or nominations?
Commissioner Orth,
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Huff,
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio.
Yes.
You want to switch chairs, or you want to stay where you're at? Okay.
Okay,
Well, you need to select committees now.
exactly. The Policies and Procedure Committees. We have talked about committee assignments, and the Executive Committee has, but I guess we're going to go forward with the committees. So I would like to look for those that would like to serve. On the Executive Committee, it's normally the chair and vice chair. Scott, will you join us? Continue on?
Absolutely. I'll stay on.
Okay. And then we do have the treasurer, so we can't go 4, correct?
The Policies and Procedures Manual states that the Executive Committee will be made up of the chair, the vice chair, and the treasurer, or a third appointed by the chair.
Okay. So I don't know. Jerry, Scott?
I can do the job without being on the executive committee. I'm just reviewing each month.
Okay. Well, you've been our treasurer for a very long time and have done a very excellent job. And we all follow.
I would be
Would you-
happy if Jerry stayed on as well, and I'm not sure if Commissioner Orth is interested on the executive committee or not.
I think by our bylaws, the vice chair would normally be on the executive.
Totally fine with me, so whatever the commission decides.
Okay, gentlemen, shall I flip a coin?
There's a question to your right.
Supervisor McCowan or Commissioner McCowan?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. So, you know, it is the chair and the vice chair, and then it's either the treasurer or an additional member appointed. So the executive committee meetings are open public meetings, Brown Act noticed. So you could have the executive committee of the chair, the vice chair, and Scott, and the treasurer could certainly attend, or vice versa. You know, so whichever one of you is not the official appointee could still attend. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, I'd like to move this forward. Beth, do you have some input?
I just wanted to note. I would like to note as well that Commissioner Orth has been on our Policies and Procedures Committee, so that will open up a spot on that committee if you were looking at continuity there.
And previously Supervisor Hamburg, Commissioner Hamburg chaired that. Is that correct?
Rosenberg,
Excuse me, Commissioner
Mike.
Orth was the chair,
Oh, okay.
and Mr. Hamburg and I served.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
so that's 2 openings on that committee.
All righty, let's get this executive committee done. Gentlemen?
Is there a, for instance, if I was on there and I couldn't attend, would Jerry be able to be the alternate and a voting alternate?
I don't know. That would be somewhat of a legal question.
I'm not sure either. That's not discussed in our policy.
Okay,
All right. It was just an option.
yes. Commissioner McCowan?
Well, one more thought. You know, it's often we attempt to balance so that we have county, district, and city, so.
Okay, so I'm happy to continue serving on the executive committee.
Okay, we'll consider that done. And the executive committee is named. Do we have that down, clerk?
Yes, thank you.
Chair, I have one more comment.
Yes, sir.
I would imagine normally then your alternate would be a city member.
My alternate to this,
No, to the
commission,
executive
yes.
committee.
I don't think we have alternates.
Something maybe
That's-
we should look into?
Okay, well, that's a legal question. But certainly an alternate, you know, it's, I think we need to ask legal counsel. And if that's okay, we'll move forward for policies and procedures. Commissioner Orth, do you want to still chair?
I'd rather move on so that someone else could have the experience, especially since I'll be taking on the executive committee.
Okay. Commissioner McCowan?
I'd be happy to defer if someone else is interested, but if needed, I would.
I'll defer.
I'd really like the opportunity to progress through maybe a year before I jump into any committees.
All right.
Being the distance I need to travel, the executive committee is, and this commission is kind of a full ticket for me.
Okay. Then I'm going to take a leap forward and appoint Commissioner McCowan as chair of the Policies and Procedures. Alternate Commissioner Rosenthal. Rosenberg. I do that every time, Carol. It's okay. I know. I guess that was just a name in my past life. As a member of the committee, any of the alternates, would you like to serve?
I would also like to point out to the commission that the city selection committee has two positions they'll be filling, one alternate and one to supplement Kevin Doyle's vacancy this afternoon.
Okay, then I think that's appropriate that we would have a county, a public, and a city, and we'll name that individual when they get appointed. Does that work for the commission? All righty. So, clerk, do you have that information down?
Yes, I do, thank you.
Okay, and do we attend this, do you attend the city selection, or?
The mayor's.
It's the mayor's, but there is
Oh.
staff,
Well, anyone could attend.
yeah.
Anyone can
The
attend.
mayor's vote.
So,
I
okay,
do not attend officially as the LAFCO clerk, no.
okay. All righty, then we're gonna move forward to consent calendar. We have 3 items, and I'm looking for any comment to any one of the 3 items. Commissioners?
I don't have any issues with the financial reports. On the minutes, though, the very last page, adjournment, it says that we'll adjourn to the next scheduled meeting of December 3rd. That should be February 4th. Or January. No, I think it was January. We had canceled January.
Right.
But the minutes do reflect it accurately because the January meeting wasn't chosen until, it wasn't canceled until after that meeting.
True, but the minutes were on December 3rd, and we're going to adjourn to December 3rd again.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's so that date just has to be changed to the January date.
Thank you, Commissioner Ward, so noted.
Okay, do I have a motion for approval of the items on the consent calendar
I get
So
to
moved.
with a correction?
I get to vote or do that now, huh? I'll second it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, was that Commissioner Ignacio for the first? Thank you.
Ignacio, yes. All righty. So, roll call, vote, please.
Commissioner Orth,
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Huff,
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio,
Yes?
Commissioner Brown.
Yes. All righty, moving along. We do not have any public hearing items, but we do have a workshop item, and that's on the Fort Bragg Rural Fire Protection District, MSR, SOI update. We'll go forward. Ms. Hinman, would you like to give us an introduction, please?
Thank you. I want to start by thanking Chief Orsi for his assistance in responding to the request for information and also for reviewing the administrative draft. This is a workshop item. The Fort Bragg Rural Fire Protection District was formed in 1960 and encompasses approximately 77 square miles surrounding the city of Fort Bragg. In 1990, the city and the district created the Fort Bragg Fire Protection Authority, which is a joint powers authority that to provide fire protection services to the city of Fort Bragg and the areas within the district. Through the authority, the district provides structural fire protection, first responder for emergency medical and hazardous materials, incidents, rescue extrication, cliff, shore rescues, fire prevention, and wildland fire protection. As a secondary provider, CAL FIRE is the first provider for wildland fire. The district's sphere was amended twice within the last few years. Back in 2011, there was a detachment of approximately 160 acres. The detachment was due to overlap areas with the city and also with the Mendocino Fire Protection District to the south. There was also an annexation of approximately 1,200 acres that was the north of 10 Mile River annexation and consisted of about 66 parcels. Both of those reorganizations were completed, and the district sphere is coterminous with its boundaries at this time. Staff and the district is okay with reaffirming the existing sphere, which is the recommendation that's provided in your workshop draft today. And we welcome any comments from the commission or the public on this document.
Yes, and I don't see anyone here for public comment, but have we received correspondence on the document itself?
Yes, the district did review the administrative draft, and those changes have been incorporated into the document as appropriate. I did reach out to Chief Forsey last week with the staff report and final workshop draft and received no comment.
Okay. Commissioners? Commissioner Worth.
Yes, I just have a question for the for staff to get back on, and that is the organizational chart shows 3 assistant chiefs, and there on the page prior shows their staffing with 1 fire chief and the 2 battalion chiefs, but no mention of these assistant chiefs. So I just wonder whether that's still current.
Thank you. We'll confirm that.
I have a question.
Okay, Commissioner, okay. You're pointing at each other. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. On page 31 of 85, we talked about the last meeting about the city of Willits not having the details of the names of the people that are serving. I mean, for instance, on page 33, Dave Turner, I don't think Dave is on the city council anymore. Now, he could be, I guess, another board director, but we talked about not having those on. And then on page 33, volunteer organization, under that, it says it was formed in October of 1891. I wonder how they got the month that year. That was a long time ago.
Probably in their forming documents.
On page 33 of 85, under 2.2.3.
First sentence.
Yeah, the first sentence. Is that true, 1891? I thought it was formed in 1960.
That may be the district.
Oh.
And so we have the district, we have the fire authority, we have the volunteer fire department.
Right.
Correct. We'll confirm that, date.
And then, as usual, my pet peeve, I guess, is the financial
Financials.
statements are very old.
That's what I have marked.
Very, very old. It looks like from the previous MSR, they do annual audits, so I don't know what the problem is getting, more current financial statements.
We will continue to try to get updated financials for that. Thank you.
Commissioner Huff.
I was looking table 2.4 on page 26 or 35 of 85, and it shows that they, in their fire authority staffing, that they have a paramedic. That suggests that they're an ALS first responder, and as much as I would like them to be, they're not. So if, as a paramedic in a non-ALS department, they can only function to the level of an EMT. And if that's a future goal for them, I'm all for it, but they're not now.
Staff, did you take that down as a question? We need to ferret out.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
It is it.
Commissioner McCowan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is it possible, though, although they could not function in an ALS capacity, they're still a paramedic? So,
As a former paramedic, this is a volunteer, and the commissioner is absolutely right. They would default to a EMT status because they're not adequately equipped with an ALS tool set while in that position as a volunteer.
Commissioner Worth?
Yes, I know that currently there's some changes occurring within the fire districts, and Chief Williams can speak to this. I'm Supervisor Williams. But Commissioner Williams.
I'm doing the same thing.
But I know there's some new models being developed where some of the fire districts have paramedics on board who work with the ambulance companies, and they're being now moved into a higher level of staffing to the fire districts to respond to medical calls. I don't know the details on that, but I know that it's just something new that's just pilot programs are starting up. So I think that is something that's a moving target right now because of trying to get ALS type service to as many areas as possible.
And Alternate Commissioner Williams, do you have comment?
I do. I don't see the quote in the document, but I heard the list of services that Fort Bragg Fire Authority provides. And I think we listed Wildland Fire as first for CAL FIRE and second for Fort Bragg Fire. I'd like to clarify that language, that I think given that CAL FIRE provides coverage seasonally, sometimes Fort Bragg is the only resource available for those fires. And I think we ought to capture that in the document, some chronology of how many state responsibility incidents the Fort Bragg Fire Authority responded to first.
Ms. Hinman, do you have that down as well?
We do, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner McCowan?
thank you, Madam Chair. One thing that I'd like to suggest for the future, so not for this round, but given that the Fort Bragg Rural Fire Protection District doesn't directly provide the service, it's through the Fire Authority, I think we should combine, we should be reviewing the Fire Authority, and a subset of the Fire Authority review would be the Fort Bragg Rural Fire Protection District and the city of Fort Bragg. And so we would capture all the finances for the Fire Authority in one document. Again, this is a future change that I'm suggesting, not something we would attempt to retrofit in here. But the next time we're reviewing the district, it would actually be in the context of it being part of the Fire Authority, along with the city being part of the Fire Authority.
Thank you, I appreciate that feedback. This is the first one that we have done a municipal service review and sphere update on that was that had a fire authority, and we will be working on the Ukiah Valley Fire District, excuse me, next. So which also has a fire authority. The difficulty is that the authority itself is a JPA, which LAFCO does not have direct oversight over, thank you. So we attempted to weave them together so that it made sense, but I appreciate your feedback and we will look into that.
Yeah, it seems like there could be a way to structure it, understanding we don't have oversight for the Fire Authority, but you know, we could still combine the review of the district and the city into one, I think. Because, again, it would give a much more complete view of the finances instead of having to go to another document. And then in terms of the finances here, it's really unclear to me how much money the district has, for instance. So, and I agree with Jerry, some of the numbers are a little stale, but beginning fund balance in 14-15, 526,000. They had a net gain on this balance sheet of 23,000, and the next year their beginning fund balance was 1.9 million.
Mm-hmm.
There's something that is not revealed in the numbers that we have here. Then there's a reference to they have about 235,000 separately set aside for future equipment acquisition, but you know, and I think we've talked about this before, we would like to see for every one of the entities that we review, the complete financial picture. So it's, you know, what are their operating funds that they have? Do they have a separate capital account?
A balance sheet too, a balance sheet.
Right, and detail all of their finances, and so you could see how some increased or decreased. It'd be logical, because you can't really tell what's going on here, or at least I can't. So, although I see the prior period adjustment, that gave them their 1.9 million. Okay, so I see where that came from now. But still, I'm not sure we're getting the full picture.
Alternate Commissioner Rosenberg.
As you're confused about the funds, I'm confused about the authority, because there were 3 separate organizations, and though they have letters of mutual aid, and it seems to me for that particular area, I wonder if the authority and who does what is as clear as, if the money is a little bit confused, I'm a little concerned about the authority issues. Are they clear?
Commissioner
Jerry.
Ward.
I agree, and John brought up a good point as well. It's really confusing reading this document with 3 different items. I'd like to also see a map that would include all 3. The one, we only received 1 map. I think in our previous MSR, they had the area for the city in a different color, so we could see the where the authority then had complete control.
Because this is half and half,
Right.
and it occurred to me, having been involved in areas in which county and city overlap,
Right.
and seeing how confusing that is to the police department in those cities, and I'm just concerned about a fire. I assume they all would come to the fire, but you know, who's in charge, kind of thing, and it just is not very clear.
Well, I'll let somebody else answer that, but I could probably do it. Commissioner.
Well, I had a bit of a separate issue.
Okay, Commissioner Worth.
I'm also on a separate issue.
Okay, we're back to Commissioner McCown.
Okay.
But it's on the, it's on this.
Well, on the map, however, the online version, I think, does show the city limits of Fort Bragg. There's, however, what I didn't clearly understand, within the city of Fort Bragg, some areas are shown in white and some are shown in gray. So what's the distinction there, or do we know? And maybe that's something we could review with the district, or the city, I mean.
The city boundary is the one that's outlined in the. There are no gray areas. I don't believe what may be showing up as gray is the parcels within the city, because they're so small and close together. The fire authority covers both the city and the entire fire
But
district boundaries.
My point was, some of the areas are still shown in white and some are shown in gray, so.
We can make that clearer on the map.
That's the grade we're talking
Or beige, whatever.
Commissioner Worth.
Yes, we talked about the firemen associations and their contributions to the various districts, and there's no line item. There's an other revenue here on this one that shows 0 contributions. And I think because the associations tend to raise funds that's used within each district to infill their budget to buy special items, that's been lacking in these reports. We don't see what the volunteer revenue, there's basically revenue produced by the volunteer associations through their fundraisers. And it's not shown in any of our documentation. And sometimes it's substantial, and some of the outlying volunteer districts, really, that's what they rely on.
Do you have a response to that?
We
Is
can
it-
look into, a lot of times when we've asked that question, the district doesn't have a finalized number because that money does not necessarily come through their accounts.
Right.
But we can ask for clarification.
I remember when we did Potter Valley,
Mm-hmm.
their community service district, and they do have a volunteer nonprofit that does the fundraising. And so, you know, it's separate. And I
maybe-
think we had a discussion about that.
Maybe just what they expend rather than what they raise for the benefit of the fire district. Because they're expending for specific items, and as they bring those items into the inventory, that's where it could be captured by the district as a revenue.
And I suggest that if we can't get that information, that some type of a statement, just a simple statement be made, that that information was not available, or then it would address your issue as well, and address the issue if the state comes and says, let us see this, and there's at least a notation.
And it's an indication of community support to each district, so.
Commissioner Ignacio.
Yes, that, and I was just, well, I'd like to confirm, and I think Ted would probably second, and Commissioner Huff as well. Firefighting associations aren't, like we said earlier, directly linked financially to their agency. If the community is supporting the firefighters, the firefighting agencies have the ability to donate that money for special purchases. But I don't know if it's necessarily something that's typically listed under as a district asset, because it's a different organization. That's what I had.
Alternate Commissioner Williams.
I would like to see us try to capture the insurability of property within the fire districts. Because with changing fire severity maps and changing ISO rating requirements, a district that is as well financed as it was last cycle may have properties that are no longer insurable. How we capture this may be subjective from the fire district. As a fire district, it's very common to get inquiries for a particular parcel. How many feet to the closest hydrant? And then the rural community, you have to explain, well, it's 9 miles, right? And then you see that address come up again and again and again as the owner tries to get insurance. This is something we want to capture because it reflects an economic picture. If we have properties that are uninsurable, we're not going to see as much tax for the local government because they may be cash transactions. It's hard to close escrow with a loan on an uninsurable property. But it also represents a real hardship for residents in the community if they can't find insurance. The California has a FAIR program. It's the insurer of last resort. Those numbers for a particular fire district may give us a snapshot of the trending insurability.
And I just want to remind the commission, the more deeper we dig into a lot of these issues, it becomes more costly for the commission to do these documents. And as it becomes more costly, we're going to get down to proposed budget discussion a little bit later. It means we will have to charge all the special districts, the county, the cities, more in revenue each year, if that's our estimate. And I think Commissioner Ward had also a comment, and he might also want to comment on that particular statement I just
Yeah, we're
made.
going to have that issue later in the agenda. I was just going back to the map again. You mentioned that the city was outlined in yellow. I can't see the yellow on the inland more. And I just wonder if you could make it, like last time it was in red. It just makes it a little easier to see, rather than seeing, you know, the gray or the white. Just make it a red.
Okay,
That
thank
way I
you.
can see. Thank you. But we will talk about that budget stuff
Yeah,
later.
yes. But I just want to remind everyone, and I think many of us that have sat on the commission for a number of years are very aware of that. And it's just something we have to keep in mind.
Good point.
Okay. Anyone else? Further comment?
Chair Brown, may I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams, does the ISO rating address that issue at all, or is this something that's beyond that?
Historically, the ISO number did address it, but there are a lot of insurance companies that are moving away from ISO or using an overlay of the fire severity. So even if you have an ISO of 5, which historically would be easily insurable, if the property falls within a high fire severity, it may not be insurable. And so it's really the intersection of those two systems.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Ms. Henman?
Chairman?
Yes, just one sec. Did you need more clarification on that?
No, that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Is the insurability of properties the purview of this commission?
I don't know. It's a changing world.
I know. I mean, I understand the foundations of LAFCO.
Yes.
And I appreciate what the commissioner's requesting. But in budget terms and reference information, I don't see where the request for details on insurability fall under this commission's purview. I'm looking for any comment.
Well, I think Ms. Henman will take the comment of our alternate commissioner and also your comment, and perhaps we'll have a report back when we get into the public hearing process.
Yes, we can do that. My initial thought is that we can add a discussion to the documents outlining that issue and how the changing ISO ratings, and maybe address it that way.
Because it's really most recently that those maps came out and significantly changed all these different areas within the state about the severity of wildland fires. Commissioner Orth?
I'm just wondering whether the commission can generate to our legislative agenda through our association that this is a rising issue. I know the state legislature is interested in. And if we are continually raising the red flag that this, I know our fire district spends a very large amount of time dealing with insurability issues for the residents. They're basically the advocates between the resident and the insurance company, and this is a role the fire districts are now playing.
Yes. And more people are finding out they're not insurable from different companies. So, okay. I think we're ready to move forward on our agenda. And so the next item is the mid-year budget and work plan review, FY 18-19. And we'll receive the executive officers. Did I do something wrong here?
Well, I think we need to give the direction, which you could probably do.
Okay. I am sorry. This is a new role for me. And kind of a surprise. All right. So we are at direct staff to notice the matter for the March 4th, 2019, or as soon as possible for consideration to go forward with the final draft.
Thank you.
Okay. Is that what I needed to read into the record?
That's perfect. Thank you.
All right. Again, moving forward to the mid-year budget review. And the executive committee did discuss this in length. All were present, and I'd like to receive a report from Ms. Hinman.
Thank you. This item and the next item kind of go together. This item is a mid-year budget review, so these numbers are as of December 31st of 2018. In fiscal year 28, the fiscal year 2018-19 budget was $150,270. The table on 61 gives a summary of that budget and where we stand to date. Approximately 54% of the budget has been expended, which is a little over 50%, but some of our larger operational cost items have been paid for the year, and that includes the annual internet services and some of the membership fees for Cal LAFCO. The apportionments were $135,000 for this fiscal year, and that the budget also included a cash balance from the previous fiscal year of $8,150 and assumed having to dip into reserves for $7,120 to balance the budget. Expenses as of December 31st are $80,672, which again is about 54%. Some remaining tasks for this year include staffing, the monthly legal counsel costs and office expenses, as well as some GIS services. We have approximately $11,000 left in the work plan to finish the 4 MSR and Sphere updates, which are noted on page 62 of your packet in the table. That includes the City of Willits, finishing up the Fort Bragg Rural Fire Protection District, the Brook Trails CSD, and the Ukiah Valley Fire District. Sorry, always want to stick protection in there. We do have administrative drafts of the top 3. We've done workshops on Willits and Fort Bragg now, and we'll be bringing Brook Trails forward soon. We are still in the beginning phases of the Ukiah Valley Fire Protection Fire District, and we anticipate finishing those by the end of this fiscal year. I did list some of the staffing tasks that have taken up a lot of our staff time in the first half of this year, and then some of the anticipated projects for the remaining part of this year include continuation of the CSA 3 inactive district notice from the State Controller's Office. We are anticipating likely 3 applications coming in, one for the Mendocino Coast Healthcare District detachment proposal that's being brought forward by landowners. We also have a proposed Millview County Water District annexation that we've been discussing with landowners, and then potentially the Anderson Valley CSD activation for latent powers. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the mid-year review.
Right, and I think it's important to point out that because of changing law and requirements to LAVCOs, we have really a number of mandated, unfunded responsibilities as a result. And I think every county and city deals with mandates by the state that go unfunded and come as a cost to everyone's budget for the year. And so maybe a little bit later we can talk about that and how that expense is shared among all the member agencies. So now we can go forward. Executive committee did review all of this at our meeting, but I'm looking for comment. Further comment? Commissioner Ward?
Well, obviously I was at the meeting, and you hit it. We have some unfunded mandates and stuff. We did talk about developing through the policies and procedures or this commission about setting up a deposit for some of the items that staff is having to deal with, get money up front rather than having come out of our general budget. The other thing is, and I can't find the table, but we had estimated $12,000 for the city of Willits, and we're up to 16,000 in costs.
The estimated budget was increased from 12,000 to 16,000 due to adding the municipal service review portion of that.
But we're over that too, aren't we?
No, we're not. I think we're at
We're on it.
13,000 for the.
But there were the couple that we were over, and it's mainly because we're spending time trying to get information from the various staffs that we're dealing with, which increases our budget costs, or UMA may have to eat it, which isn't fair. So I'm looking for direction from the commission of how we go forward too, because it seems like an ongoing thing. And we are getting our MSR SOI updates delayed because we're not meeting, getting the information timely, which puts us in a position where we're always falling behind. And as a commissioner for a long time, I want to see these MSRs done more timely and keep up with our reviews. So we're quite far behind. Just the Fort Bragg rural, was done in 2011, and here we are 2019 doing it again. So anyway.
And I think when districts do not respond, or cities, I think it's important to make that notation and move forward. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it becomes more costly. It tends to drag out our timeline and what we're required to do under state code in finishing these reviews.
I did, that is one of the big issues, and I did talk to our attorney about that. What was a liability if we didn't have the information and we just put it in MSR, that it wasn't a response? And he didn't see it as a real big concern. He did point out, though, that a county that's only $89,000 to $90,000 and with a budget of $135 to $150 is very, very, very low compared to other counties that have LAFCOs. He mentioned one county that had 100,000 people, and their LAFCO budget was $300,000. So hearing that, it opened up my eyes a little bit. He did say that we can contact Cal LAFCO. They've got all the budgets for the different counties and what they spend on LAFCO, and I think it would behoove this commission to see that, so we understand that our budget is quite lean.
Well, and I'm going to talk the other side of it. I worry about all the special districts.
Yes.
We look at the cemetery districts, we look at our fire departments, and many of them struggle to make ends meet, and to charge them more of a yearly fee is very difficult for me to support. So, Commissioner Rosenberg.
I'm really concerned about the money thing because, in a sense, if we don't have enough budget, we are basically a rubber stamp for what is, and there's no way we can even move forward. And I remember when LAFCO really basically was a do-nothing LAFCO, and I would hate to see us do that, go back that way. I've really been pleased at the fact that when we had extra money in the budget, we lowered the amount of money we charge the special districts. So I think our special districts need to know how conservative we've been in terms of our requests for funds. But I really think we need to move forward and raise our rates just so that we can do the job that they've asked us to do. And I know it will be hard for the special districts, and maybe we need to change the formula so that the very tiny districts are not raised and other districts are. I don't know if that's even possible under the law. But I do know that if we're going to be a functioning LAFCO and do the things that the state wants us to do, and Lord knows they've given us a whole lot of unfunded mandates this past year, I think we really need to bite the bullet and ask for more money.
Commissioner McCowan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I would suggest we already have more money. We have $90,000 in reserves, $50,000 set aside for a legal challenge that has yet to materialize. There's no current threat. No one's brandishing their legal sabers at us right now. So rather than increase the apportionment, I would prefer to take a fresh look at our reserve policy, and we have more reserves than we actually need, knowing that any year that we decide we need more money, we simply raise the apportionment, and people are forced to pay.
And that was a discussion with the executive committee as well, and has been a discussion each budget year with the commission itself. Commissioner Orth.
Looking at cash flow would be the important issue, just to make sure the budget is covered. That's what the reserves are for. We can, from our history, look at who pays when, and so that we ensure the reserves cover any of those cash flow issues plus a percentage over. I think that would be a reasonable policy.
Commissioner Ignacio.
I also like the idea that Commissioner Ward brought up. I think it would do this commission well to tap into the resources of CalAFCO just to do a comparison of what other counties, because they may have a funding option that we haven't considered.
We did tap into our reserves this year, and we'll probably and we did pay it back, but we'll probably tap into it again at the end of this fiscal year, because we will be short by 8,000 or 9,000.
And I would also like to note, and maybe others have looked at this, but our reserves, the policy says 25%, and we have a little bit more than that as well. Commissioner McCowan?
Well, and again, I'll suggest we ought to review the legal reserve, and do we really need to have 50,000 sitting aside year after year after year that we never access?
These are all very good points. Commissioner Rosenberg.
I remember 2 years ago when we were looking at the relationship between the Sand District and the city, that there was definitely a threat. And so I do remember that rather vividly, and that is still possibly a threat. I mean, we do have and the Millview Water District is a bit of a concern, again, when there are special districts and overlapping the city of Ukiah, there is always a problem that could become a legal problem. And therefore, knowing the cost of legal action, I would hate to see us unprotected.
Okay, we've had a lot of comment. Commissioner Ward?
Yeah, regarding the 50,000, I was against it in the beginning. I thought that was a lot as well. The problem is we don't have the ability to borrow. So if we do get something thrown at us, we may not be able to portion that the next year so what do you do then? The county gonna maybe fund us money up front or something? So I have a little concern about that too, but I've tried as a commissioner to keep us out of lawsuits, so I think we could maybe come off that a little bit, but I certainly feel that we do need something there just in case. John has a question.
Commissioner McCowan.
Well, and, you know, I think I agree with all your comments, and Commissioner Rosenberg, and, you know, people were brandishing the legal sabers a few years ago, but that was a few years ago. And it's probably going to be at least a year before we might get in that situation again. And the nature of lawsuits, they're usually not that fast developing, where you spend a huge amount of money up front. You know, the big bite comes a little bit down the road. So I think there would be time to adjust and raise the apportionment if necessary, when and if that day comes, instead of having this, I think, excessive amount set aside where there's no current threat. So
okay.
I think it could prudently be reduced to 25,000.
Is that what you recommend, 25?
So I'm going to move this along, because now we're talking about preliminary budget review. So I think we have been on item A. Now we are on item B.
Okay.
So we'll take all the comments into consideration that have been made.
Can I interrupt for a moment? I notice Camille is kind of walking the plank
Carmel?
up there. Could we move, come back to this and come to the item she's here for?
If all the commission agrees,
Fine with me.
okay. Then we will move forward on the agenda before our budget review for 1920, and we will go to county service area status determination. And Ms. Hinman, would you like to introduce the item, please?
Thank you. In 2017, the passage of SB 448 added provisions to the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act, which is referred to as CKH in your staff report, regarding special districts that are inactive. And the statutes require the State Controller's Office to identify inactive districts in each county and then notify LAFCOs of those inactive districts to take action for dissolution. The statute requires that within 90 days of receiving that notice from the State Controller's Office, the Commission is required to either, one, make a determination on the status of that district, and if it is found to be inactive, to initiate dissolution. So on November 6, 2018, Mendocino LAFCO did receive notification regarding County Service Area Number 3, which is included in your staff report as Attachment 1. The documentation was provided to the Auditor Controller's Office and also to the County Executive Office, and a request to assist with the status determination was made at that time. We did receive a comment from the CEO's office and from the Auditor Controllers that it was, if possible, to CSA would like to be, CSA 3 would like to be kept active. I do understand that the Board of Supervisors has this item on their agenda at their meeting tomorrow and will be discussing CSA 3. So the steps before LAFCO are to, one, confirm the status of CSA 3, and your staff report includes the section, the government code section that helps make that determination. The second step would be a resolution initiating dissolution, and there is a draft resolution in your packet. And then to hold one public hearing for dissolution of the district within 90 days. The recommendations before you today, in light of the Board of Supervisors discussing this on their agenda tomorrow, the first recommendation would be to delay the commission determination until the Board of Supervisors has had that discussion. There are other recommendations, options for moving forward should the commission wish to do that.
And yes, again, this is something that LAFCO has been directed to do under law, to look at inactive districts. So we do have a responsibility to do that. But in a document that we had at Board of Supervisors at one of our last meetings, most current meetings, an old county council report said that this CSA has been used twice in the past. And once it was completed, there was no funding dedicated to it, but it has been used twice. And I think Ms. Angelo will let her speak, and then we can have questions from the commission, but it is on the Board of Supervisors agenda for tomorrow.
Can I ask a question first?
Commissioner Ward?
Why did the state find it inactive? What was, for the record?
There are four criteria. One, does it meet the definition of a special district according to the government code? Two, the district does not have any financial transactions in the previous fiscal year. The district has no assets or liabilities, and no debts, judgment, litigation, contracts, or liens. And that is the case for CSA 3 as far as we've been able to.
And just with the same with this commission and LAFCO, having to search out all JPAs within the county, that was a new mandate. I think we all participated to give LAFCO that information, assist staff. I believe this is another new requirement. and reports do go into the controller's office. And so then it comes back to the local LAFCO in the form of a letter, and then we have to take action one way or another. Commissioner Williams?
Has Service District 3 paid any fees?
Well, are you asking a question? Okay, let
Through the
Ms.
chair.
Angelo go forward, and then if we have questions of her, we can ask those.
Okay, thank you. Carmel Angelo, Mendocino County CEO. Thank you very much for allowing me to come and speak today on the County Service Area 3. I appreciate the work that LAFCO has to do with SB 448, and I understand that that is a state mandate and something you have to do. I believe that CSA 3 has been inactive. I do not think that there have been any fees, but I would have to check with our auditor and with county council on that. But to my knowledge, there have not been. The CSA 3 is something that has been on our radar within the county system, but obviously something we haven't really acted on over the last decade. My understanding from prior chief councils is that CSA 3 can be used for fire and EMS. So when we got notified by LAFCO that this would be on your agenda and that you did have the mandate to work to dissolve this, I went to county council again and asked them to please give us a written legal opinion on CSA 3. And given that the CSA has not had any dollars in it and the county hasn't acted on it, is it still possible to do that? So I am waiting, actually the county is waiting for a legal opinion, a written legal opinion from our council. I don't have that yet, but as a preliminary discussion with our deputy chief counsel twice now on this, I believe there is a possibility that that the CSA 3 is something we could utilize. Whether that comes out to be the official legal determination or not, I would ask LAFCO to please hold off on starting the dissolution of this because it's worth it. If we actually could use the County Service Area 3 as a mechanism to bring in dollars for fire and EMS, that would certainly behoove us. This item is on the board agenda for tomorrow. There is an additional item on the agenda tomorrow, which is the formation of an ad hoc, which would be fire and EMS sustainability. And with that ad hoc, if it's possible that CSA 3 could be utilized for either fire or EMS or fire and EMS sustainability, that is something I believe the county would seriously want to look at. So it's my request that you go to your first recommendation, which is to your recommended action to delay the commission determination on the status of CSA 3 to allow the Board of Supervisors to discuss the matter during our meeting tomorrow and direct staff accordingly. So I did speak with our deputy chief counsel again this morning at 8:45. I know that this is actually very complex when you look at all of the issues with the CSA 3 and the resolutions, and so I don't anticipate that we will have a legal opinion by tomorrow. So it may take a couple weeks. So I respectfully request that LAFCO please hold off on any decisions with the CSA 3 at this time. Thank you.
Okay, and we did have one question, Commissioner Williams.
As far as any.
I think it was answered. The question was, has this, Special District 3 paid any fees to LAFCO?
I do not think so.
Not the district itself, but the county does pay a third of the apportionment fees.
We pay a third for the county. Sir?
I'm curious whether that changes the inactive status, the fact that there has been a financial transaction.
My understanding is that the CSA itself does not have an active board, so I don't know that that applies.
Okay. Commissioner Worth?
Yes, I believe the Board of Supervisors act as CSA 3 board because it's a Board of Supervisors dependent district, just like a city If they do a municipal services district, the city council becomes that board. I also am very, I warmly applaud your comments, because the Fire Association has been, and as you know, we started discussing CSA 3 as a potential way to take care of some of the issues, especially with districts going outside their taxable district boundaries to respond to emergencies, but also in light of the past few years with EMS and emergency evacuation and mapping, and having a district that can cover the whole county to bring in the grant funding that is now becoming available. Maybe if the county took the 172 funds being distributed to the fire districts now and put it through CSA 3, that would show the kind of budget, that would allow that district to continue to operate in the kind of function the county is looking forward to in the future.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ward.
Is there a determination we can make that would keep the CSA 3 open to the state?
We'll have to look into that further. The statute right now says that if a district is inactive, LAFCO shall dissolve it.
But could we come up a reason why we want to keep it open? Just
We can
what
certainly
Carmel said.
talk with our legal counsel and work with the county council on that.
That might be the best solution, is to keep it open somehow, make a determination we can.
Sure. And I personally know Betty E., so not that's going to change state legislation or state code, but at least, maybe we can get some help in seeing it continue. Supervisor McCowan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, it seems pretty clear that currently CSA 3 does meet the definition of an inactive district. However, the Board of Supervisors can change that or give direction to change that starting tomorrow. And, I agree with all the comments that have been made. And, one pretty easy fix, I think, the board could certainly give direction that the funds that are, as of the last few years, dispersed to the fire districts could be allocated to CSA Area 3 and dispersed through CSA 3. We could do the same for the ambulance funds that have been going to Covelo, Laytonville, and Anderson Valley. So simply directing that those funds be dispersed through CSA 3, deposited into and dispersed through, would solve the issue of is it an active district or not, which relates primarily to do they have any financial transactions. So I think this is a problem the board, if it chooses, could give direction tomorrow that would resolve it. Therefore, recommendation 1 makes sense, and we would be able to come back the following month with a report of the steps that are being taken. They may not have been brought to fruition by that point, but there would be, I think, sufficient reason to hold off on dissolving the district.
And my further comment is to dissolve it and then to go back and want to recreate it is
It's never going to happen.
Is a huge responsibility and a lot of work. But I do want to ask, and perhaps Ms. Angelo does not know this, is that a consideration, the question that we want to direct to our legal counsel about can we activate this without receiving penalties or LAFCO not doing their job as under state code with the state controller? Is this something that our county council is going to be looking at, that can we reactivate after at least the letter and the consideration by LAFCO?
Our county council is looking at this and will look at this. I believe that what we can do, and certainly in my 26 years of experience working with the state, there are times where we could send a letter and request either a waiver or some special dispensation. And what we would do in this case is we would obviously petition LAFCO and do whatever we needed to do. So yes, I do believe County Council is looking at this. They will be working on this, and I certainly will work with UMA on this.
Yep. Commissioner Huff.
Do you have some concrete ideas on what to do with this other than it just being a financial pass-through at this point?
I believe that given that the board will be forming a fire and EMS sustainability ad hoc, that these decisions will be made by the board. I can honestly tell you that without a legal opinion as to all of the options that we have, I cannot answer your question. Personally, as the CEO, I see it as a mechanism to bring in money to pay for fire and EMS, and that's really what I'm looking at.
Okay.
Commissioner Ignacio.
So I want a clarification on page 71 at the top there under the background. The August 1274 discusses community services area 1. Was that supposed to be a 3?
The resolution does say 1, and we do have some gaps in our record of resolution, so, but I believe that 1 changed to 3 at some point.
Okay, at one point?
Yeah, I think
because I see a month later it's listed as 3.
Yeah, I believe just as you go through here, the first action was Point Arena Joint Union School District.
Well, for the
And then-
purposes of establishing an ambulance district, and that's what I was hoping to comment to.
Yes, and I think the actions through the years made it a 3 because the district enlarged through time.
So
To
do we
cover
have
the whole county.
a boundary? I mean, my understanding with CS3 was like it was the Arena Joint School District. Is it larger than that?
Yes, it's gone from the school district. If you look on background, and you can see the resolutions from 74 to 85, I think that really kind of tells the story.
Well, the reason I say I was a part of the 85 and 90 changes when the purpose was to get ambulance services in the underserved area of the South Coast. And in 85, it was actually in 86 that through the work of the CSA, it was AB 4227 with Dan Hauser that created the Coast Life Support District. And then in 96, it became a tax district, so.
Yes, and I think that's why former auditor Dennis Huey
Yes,
said that it has been used twice in the past for specific area projects.
right.
But went on further to say it's never been funded, and the projects he recalls occurred prior to 1996. And then we received Prop 218, which, you know, challenges, it's not a challenge, but it's the public's right to have public hearings on the revenues that are being proposed. But with this currently not being funded, but I think that's how it went from a 1 in
To a 3.
74 to a 3, because it enlarged
In a matter
to
of a
cover the
month.
whole county.
Right.
I don't know. Just trying to guess.
That's as good as.
History research. Commissioner,
I saw that when it went countywide, it also adopted all powers of a special district. And as you know, we now have to redefine which powers are actively going to be used. So that would be part of the process. And I would recommend you look beyond fire and ambulance and look at some of the power lighting issues, because
roads.
Infrastructure.
in roads, which would tie to emergency access, that kind of thing. So, but that would be a review. LAFCO, if the county picks up CS3, we would have a review of those powers.
And Commissioner Orth, that's how I got this summary. Was in a packet when we had our Department of Transportation giving us presentations. Commissioner McCowan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm ready to make a motion whenever you're ready to entertain one.
One other comment, looking at Commissioner Rosenberg.
I believe that again, for our own safety and protection, we should consult our own lawyer in addition to the county looking at this from a legal point of view.
I think that is understood,
Okay, thank you.
because he does specialize in LAFCOs.
He is a specialist and also to protect ourselves.
And to help the county as well.
Yeah.
So, and we're all member agencies. So it's
And I
important
know we try to save costs, but
well, it's important to check the box, and he's on retainer,
Right.
not knowing how many questions we're going to have that, this particular time period.
just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yes. And we do have Commissioner McCowan, who is going to attempt a motion.
Correct. And I would say the question to our attorney might be, what penalty, if any, is there? Because I think the threat that the state's going to come down on LAFCO and it's going to result in some great, travail for us is
Small.
pretty hypothetical. But so with that, I would move support for recommendation number 1.
I'll second.
I'd like to question the motion with the fact that it says provide direction to staff. So you propose number 1, but number 4 would be for staff to consult with our legal counsel.
Well, I think that's kind of understood. They're going to do that.
Okay, I'm just suggesting
By order
it
of
be
the
in.
chair.
Okay. Got it. All right. Any other comment? Ms. Angelo, we do have a motion. Clerk, please conduct roll call.
Commissioner Ignacio,
Yes.
Commissioner Huff,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan,
Yes.
Commissioner Orth,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very
Ms.
much.
Angelo, thank you.
We have
Okay.
3 votes here. You shouldn't have any problem tomorrow, right?
Chair Brown, can you
Oh.
5 minutes?
Pardon? A break?
5 minutes?
Absolutely. And we probably will let 5 minutes turn into 10. back with our meeting, and we will go back up on our agenda to item 7B, and this is preliminary fiscal year 1920 budget review. Ms. Hinman, please give us an introduction.
Thank you. I want to preface this by saying the intent of this item is to bring forward our initial thoughts on the budget and the work plan priorities in order to get commission feedback for preparation of the preliminary budget that we'll bring forward next month. We did discuss it with the executive committee, and their direction was to bring it forward to the full commission for discussion. I'll start, this is on page 64 of your agenda packet. So we're now in the position where our budget horizon is such that our revenues will need to start matching our operational expenses for each year. And over the past 5 years, we've had reserves that we have, excess reserves that we've relied upon to balance our budget, which has allowed us to keep the apportionment fees low. The table under item 1 in your staff report shows that we have adopted and received apportionment fees of $135,000 this year. The projected, let me start with saying that there are several attachments to your staff report that we'll go over. Attachment 1 is the budget summaries for the past 4 years. Attachment 2 is the preliminary 1920 budget, and then also attachment 3 is a preliminary 5-year rolling work plan. So I'll go through each of those. If the, let's see, staff is recommending a budget of $159,720, which is an increase of about $9,000 over this fiscal year. That would require revenues to be about $150,000. $6,300 is the anticipated cash balance that will roll over from this fiscal year to next. About $3,000 in reserves would be necessary to balance the budget for next fiscal year. The increases in staffing is expected to be about $1,500, and that is primarily for unfunded mandates that have come down and are coming down, that we continue to work through. There was an approximate increase in $2,300 anticipated for office services and supplies, and that's mostly to cover the expected increase in costs from the policy changes that allow the city members to submit for mileage reimbursement. For the work plan, which I'll go over in detail in a minute, is expected to have an increase to $41,250. And that is for shifting around some of the work plan tasks in response to inquiries that we've received. The reserves are at $90,346, and we have talked about that a little bit already. So for the proposed 1920 work plan, we had originally thought to do the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District and the City of Ukiah in the same year, which would have been fiscal year beginning in 2020. We've had a number of inquiries about annexing into the Ukiah Valley Sand District from landowners, and until we have an adopted sphere for that district, we will not be able to consider those annexations. So we've proposed bumping up the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District to this next fiscal year, and then also including Mendocino City, CSD, and the Covelo Community Services District. The City of Ukiah is initiating its general plan update this year, and it's expected to take a couple of years. We have discussed, our initial discussion with the city is to coordinate with them on their general plan update and wrap in the sphere of influence update at that time. That will be a significant efficiency for both planning purposes and CEQA costs when that comes up. So for options for the 1920, let's see. Options for reducing some of these costs that we looked at were to move commission meetings to every other month instead of monthly, which would be a cost savings of around $5,000 to $7,500 would be my guess. Some of the other options we discussed, which Commissioner Ward brought up already, was to begin charging for inquiries that will take research over a certain amount, and that would be a policy requirement. We would need to do a policy for that, an amendment to our fee schedule. For example, we spent well over 50 or 60 hours on the Mendocino Coast Healthcare District inquiries to date, which is pretty expensive. And that was just one inquiry. There were a number of inquiries this year that we spent quite a bit of time looking into. Our next steps in the budget development, our preliminary budget and proposed work plan should be adopted by the commission at the March meeting. And then we distribute to the member agencies for comment, and we adopt a proposed budget and work plan with distribution again. And then a final budget and work plan must be adopted by the June meeting. To go over the attachments, I tried a little graph here that can kind of show the last 4 years and how the three budget summary areas, basic staff services, the work plan, and then the office services and supplies, how that has changed over the last 4 years, as well as our apportionment fees. The estimated budget for the 1920 fiscal year is on page 68 of your packet. And then the proposed rolling work plan. And the proposed rolling work plan has always been a document that is intended to be a planning tool for us to look ahead and make sure that we stay on track with our work plan tasks, which are required, the MSR and the sphere updates, and also to look ahead and look at the numbers a little bit so that we spread things out and don't get balled up with a huge work plan budget for any one year. We anticipate that the top tier on that work plan is the remainder of this fiscal year, so you'll see the ones that we have proposed to finish in this year. And those include the City of Willits, the Brook Trails Township CSD, Fort Bragg Rural Fire Protection District, and the Ukiah Valley Fire District. We do have the Mendocino Coast Healthcare District in here because that which would be a fee-based application and not a cost to LAFCO. If we do get that application in, we will likely have to do a minor sphere amendment along with the application. And so for fiscal year 1920, it would be the Mendocino CSD, the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District, and the Covelo CSD. I do want to point out that CEQA is not included in any of these costs. And in speaking with our legal counsel, CEQA is triggered anytime the commission does anything other than adopt a coterminous sphere. A coterminous sphere is not going to help folks who are needing to annex into a district, and there may be some cost recovery options that we'll have to discuss as a commission if we get to that point. But I did want to be clear on that, and it's something that we are struggling with the City of Willits right now as to how to address those issues. On the reserves, I did want to note, because of the discussion during the last item, the $50,000 on legal counsel was a number that was recommended or suggested from our legal counsel, and he noted that one CEQA lawsuit, or if someone were to sue LAFCO for whatever purposes, that would be about 1 year's worth of legal fees, most likely. So that was where that number came from. And the reserves, the operational reserves, we had set the policy to be 25% of the operational, the expenditures for that fiscal year. When we did the research, that number was anything from 10% to 35% for other LAFCOs. So I just wanted to make those 2 points, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Commissioners? Commissioner McCowan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, frankly, it's a testament to how helpful our executive director is willing to be, and I think the board gave some direction also, but we should not put ourselves in the position again where we have our executive officer spending 40 or 50 or 60 hours looking into an issue raised by an individual citizen or even a district for that matter. So, you know, I think we could agree on maybe a reasonable amount of time that we would use to respond to citizen inquiries, but, you know, and I don't know.
Or
if that's-
district, or
Pardon?
any inquiries.
Any inquiry. So maybe it's 2 hours of staff time, maybe it's 4, I'm not sure. But beyond that amount, if that individual or entity wants to pursue it, they would need to pay a deposit and be billed against the deposit. So that'd be one issue that I think will make more efficient use of staff time. Another issue is, I believe the commission has adopted a policy that when we're doing the SOI reviews, if any entity requests that that SOI be increased, that they would have to pay a deposit and bill against it and pay the full cost of processing that expanded SOI. So staff can check that for me, but I thought that was policy direction from the commission. And another thing that we might review is, I know with the county, when people come in for land use applications, a general plan amendment, a use permit, whatever, the county requires that they agree to indemnify the county should there be a legal challenge. So that's something we might review with our legal counsel. Could LAFCO adopt an indemnification policy that would require an applicant for an annexation or an SOI increase to indemnify LAFCO? Because we shouldn't be caught up in someone else's legal fight, frankly. We shouldn't have to pay for it.
And I also think it's important that when we do have a retainer and we do have an issue that we're working on, and I will say this is in the case of an individual that didn't get billed quickly enough, and when they got billed, when they added up the hours, has not paid, and that's been several years. And I believe that's around $619. So it, you know, we also may include in a statement that they sign, because I'm not sure what they sign when they give the retainer, or if this individual even did, but I can't remember. But I think it's important that we hold them responsible for all debt on any project that we work on.
So we do have an agreement to pay form with an indemnity clause in it that we require to be submitted for any pre-application or for any application. And the policy has since changed that we do require a deposit up front, and as we get close to that, spending down that deposit, we request additional funds before moving forward based on that issue
one
you're talking
issue,
about.
yes. That's good. Sir. Commissioner Williams.
Was the 40 to 50 hours of staff time at the direction of the commission?
I think at least in part.
Yes.
Commissioner Orth.
Because we're looking at reserve policy, we should, and because LAFCO is a public agency where people and issues arise during, that are outside of the budget review process that we go through, it might be important to have a line item for public staff review time. If we're going to reduce the reserve, let's put in another line item to cover some of those hours. Have a reasonable hour that would cover for a typical, look at the experience of how many inquiries do you generally get that are outside of the budget year, and just come up with a line item to at least cover that basic cost before we start demanding money from a member of the public because they have a question of LAFCO.
Commissioner Rosenberg.
I know that legal counsel for the county has had lots of requests for documents and past information. And there's the legal reason that one needs to give people the information that they request. So, in a sense, there's a certain amount of responsibility that we have to give people the information that they ask for. And sometimes that means research. So, I think we need to make sure that the budget has enough money for some of that, and I'm not sure if we can actually charge people when they request that kind of information.
I think under PRAs, you can't charge anything. It used to be per page.
You can charge them the copy cost, and
but not the research.
if you have electronic documents and you need to redact them as of January 1st, you can charge for your cost of preparing those electronic documents. But generally, just to get the PRA information, there's no charge.
So I don't know what kinds of requests that we get for information, but we need to make sure that we're able to meet the legal requirements of that.
Well, that's not what we're really talking about here.
What form a request for information comes, people get wiser and wiser how to do it so that it doesn't charge them.
Well, thank you. Your points made, and all the points have been good ones. And we will have another opportunity to fully discuss this in the next couple of months' meetings. Any other questions? Responses, statements? Commissioner Ward.
Well, I'm not on the executive committee. I guess I can go, but I think they need some direction where this commission's going so that you can come back with a recommendation in March.
Commissioner McCowan, and I have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think staff is asking for direction, and frankly, my direction would be that, or I would hope the commission would direct that we keep the apportionment the same, and so that would mean reducing the legal fee, the legal reserve by $15,000, which I think is still more than ample, particularly given the potential changes we're discussing, like having a beefed up indemnification.
It was also suggested at the executive committee level that there be a policy on those deposits, but rather than going back to the PMP, because it's going to take more staff time to meet with the PMP, which more cost, I recommended that staff just bring us a sample or a recommended policy that we could just vote on, rather than just forming a PMP to do it, because it's just a simple policy. So that was what I recommended at the executive committee level.
So anyone else? Okay. All righty. Do you have any questions?
I got it. So I just want to clarify, the recommendation is to keep the apportionment at $135,000, which is what we have this year, and to bring forth a policy recommendation for reducing the legal counsel reserves to $35,000, which is a reduction of $15,000, and also for adding a policy for staff consultation for time spent over 2 hours, a policy for that, and a fee schedule amendment for that.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Updates. And a lot of that time is research by staff for no other reason that the agencies that are being updated didn't respond or lacked the information. If there was a way to encourage those agencies by even offering, saying, we will provide some of this, but this is what it will cost, to give them the option, they may jump at that option, and it would be funded. It would fund our staff to do that extra work, so we wouldn't be outside the work budget.
Yeah, that's right. Good point.
Yeah. Supervisor McCowan.
Well, and particularly on the SOIs, and I think some districts have no intention to expand, or so we could simply say, you don't provide the information, you automatically would have a coterminous sphere, and our staff will not be doing the work for you. So we could simply, we're adopting a coterminous sphere, and we're noting the non-responsiveness of the district or the city or whoever it is. I agree our staff shouldn't uncompensated be doing research to acquire basic info that should be provided by the entity.
Commissioner?
So the information I was provided in the executive committee is that, in fact, they are spending time researching information, going through public, that our staff has boxes to fill in. They have reports to make.
They could make a PRA request of the district.
Well put.
That might work, come to think of it. Commissioner Orth.
I was just thinking that at the end of an MSR, we could make a part of our determinations or report. Could be just a small section and or, well, first of all, we've never held a workshop with the districts as to what the MSR process requires of the districts. And that might be a way to illuminate and train up executive and people who are staffing these districts as to what is going to come forward as requests for information. Also, at the end of an MSR, we could then list the kind of information that we had issues in getting and how it, at least give them a list of how to improve for the next review in 5 years, because it's an ongoing process. And with each district, from that experience, we could say, we didn't get these responses over the next 5-year period. If you keep that on your radar, you can prepare this material before the next review. Something like that, so that the boards get a report in an MSR process that lets them be clear that this is a required process and that there are levels of information that need to be generated every 5 years.
Vice Chair Orth, you are now taking over the meeting. Alternate Commissioner Williams, you're now a commissioner. Thank you. See you next month.
Thank you.
Have a good meeting with your congressperson.
Yeah.
Okay. Where were we on the agenda? We were in the budget review and we skipped
7B.
So we were on 7B. Did you get enough information?
I did, thank you.
And has the commission finished their comments? Okay, then we'll move to, and we've already covered 7C, so we're going to item 8, information and report items. So let's go to 8A, the work plan, current and future proposals.
Thank you. This information was covered a couple of times already in items, but just to recap, we have no new active applications. We are anticipating a few applications coming in, one for annexation of Masonite properties into the Millview County Water District. There's still the proposed consolidation of water districts in the Ukiah Valley area. I have no update on that at this time. And then a proposed detachment from the Mendocino Coast Healthcare District that the landowners are anticipating submitting a pre-application this week.
And we've not heard back from Willits as to any annexation process that they're desiring?
We are working through that, those options. We have been talking with our legal counsel regarding the CEQA requirements, and then working with the city on those issues. But this is going to be one of those where we are looking at a coterminous sphere possibility because LAFCO does not have the funds to do CEQA. So we're working through that with the city.
And we have now directed you to, or we need to come up with a CEQA policy. Is that what the commission directed in the last discussion?
To look into our policies to see if we have one in place regarding districts that would like an expanded sphere and paying for the CEQA.
Okay. Commissioner comments? Jerry?
Are we still on schedule for next month for their public hearing? Willits?
I have to check in with the city today, and then we'll, yeah, we have to have the public notice in by Wednesday, I believe, to make that deadline. And I'll be confirming that with Dusty today or tomorrow.
And you also mentioned that their wastewater numbers were not updated either. Have you made any progress on that?
We have been able to get clarification on that, yes.
Good. Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Any further discussion? Then we'll move on to correspondence.
We have provided copies in the agenda packet, the last few pages. It was an update from Lisa Wager regarding her her attendance and meeting with the hospital district CEO and the board of directors. So that is included in your packet.
Any responses to that by the commissioners? John?
Well, it seems as though they're willing to pay the fees for the process of detachment, so, you know, that will provide an opportunity to resolve the issue without us having to do more uncompensated work.
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
I think there's a practical issue there with if you were to start an ambulance from Coast Hospital and from UVMC, figuring out where they would meet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't exactly know. I have some guesses, and I think this detachment is a good start, but I could see this coming up again and there being another effort. Has there been any movement on that practical issue and working out where the line should be in terms of best patient care?
We will be, we have made initial contact with CAL FIRE because they do a lot of the dispatching, so we will be working with them. We won't be able to really dig into the issue until we get a deposit for staff time.
And then, if I may, part two, the question may not be finding the equal distant line, because I could imagine Coast Hospital, where there's only one ambulance at night, not wanting to strip the entire coast. And so it may make sense to move that line a little bit more towards the 101 corridor where there's more than one ambulance. Aside from the parties who have corresponded so far, has there been any involvement from, say, the hospitals or the LEMSA?
No, not at this time.
We just received comment that from the people who live there that it was a much shorter distance to go to Ukiah versus the Coast Hospital. That's the only input we've received so far.
And I would agree with that, but I would think there are residents beyond them towards the coast who would find that same circumstance, and this may be a piecemeal process rather than doing the work up front to save ourselves from multiple iterations.
Good point.
The original boundaries for the healthcare district were the same as the school district boundaries, which was pretty common when special districts were established, and that was to save costs on mapping for one. So you may have a good point there.
Carol?
I was concerned about the fact of the newspaper report, which in a sense spoke to the financial conditions of the hospital. So this whole issue might become the fact that there's a special district issue of no medical coverage on the coast, or no hospital on the coast. There is other medical services. So I think we need to pay attention to that, and those are the kinds of issues that we have never really taken a leadership position in, but I think we need to pay a whole lot of attention to.
And a comment back on that is I believe the county working on CS3 is important to that issue in the future.
Yeah, that might be very important to that issue in the future.
Any other comments? And we'll move on to the next item, 8C, Executive Officers Report. Uma?
Thank you. I wanted to mention that the 700 forms are due, and our clerk Beth will be corresponding with you each on that. I wanted to also share that direction during the last meeting was to send out a letter to the county with the CC to the cities regarding encouraging the process for developing master tax sharing agreements with the cities. That has been sent out. Staff has continued to work on the pre-application request process with Lisa Wager regarding the healthcare district issues, and also has met with landowners regarding the Millview County Water District and the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District potential annexations. We also did meet with the Albion Little River Fire Protection District, who are working through some concerns about how to fill the role of fire chief and administrative duties and efficiencies for the district. I also wanted to note that LAFCO is now eligible for the Sustainable Agricultural Lands Conservation Planning Grants. I don't know that this commission has an opportunity to take advantage of those, but those planning grants are for the implementation of plans for the protection of ag lands and risk of conversion. And then on a personal note, I really wanted to thank Jerry for his mentoring over the last few years. He's been the chair for my whole time here to date, and I really want to thank you for
thank you.
helping me through that.
And welcome to your new role as an advocate instead of defending and keeping us all in line. So I realize we've kind of switched roles here. Is that the end of your report then?
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, then our last item is the second to last item, commissioner reports. Any comments or questions?
Well, as an advocate, I've been trying to look at our legal fees and how the hours, I think John brought it up in the past of are we exceeding our hours and stuff, and I am not getting the billings. I'm missing some billings anyway. I was wondering if you could, I've got a few from June to December, but I'm missing something in October. I was wondering if you can give me the billing statements with the hours on them.
Absolutely. I'll communicate with you this week about what you need.
That way
Thank
I can
you.
check. I think our agreement with our attorney is that he'll charge anything over 12 hours and a quarter. And from what I've seen, we're doing okay. But you just asked him for two more opinions today, so I don't know, he might throw us over the...
Well, frankly, I think we've been paying more than what his stated hourly rate is, because we don't have that many questions.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll give a report at the next meeting on that.
So noted. Thank you, Jerry.
And as I come back on that, commissioners, remember we can ask legal questions from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have any, just bring them along. Is there any other commissioner reports or comments? Okay, then we'll move to our last item, CalAFCO business and legislative report. Oh, yes. Committee reports. I was not at the last executive committee report. Mr. Ward, do you have a report?
No, I think we've covered it pretty much. We brought up, I think, all the issues that we discussed. I can't think of any more. Scott, did you?
No, I think we touched on every piece.
Good. Okay. Then, yes.
I also wanted to mention that there is I think it's an ethics training on February 11th at Mendocino Fire Hall. Is that right?
Yep. Fire department.
Fire department.
Yeah,
That's
it's a
the Brown Act and ethics.
I know a few of you are signed up, I think, for that.
Make sure you call ahead. I think they were filling up. I may have taken the last seat.
Oh.
Yeah, you can walk right next door to
Well,
county
I'm-
council.
I'm assuming we have the reservations. We made them over a month ago, right? Yeah, I think we're...
Yeah, you're confirmed, I believe, Scott.
This may be off subject, but we did budget $500 for ethic training on this particular budget. Is that something we still need to consider? If so, we need to
Additional.
set something up.
So if there is interest in having an additional training, then we can certainly set that up. There was one in January,
Here, and you
and one, in February, so we can work with county council to do that.
I don't believe that training is defined as a Brown Act in ethics. So if there was another type, Tony had mentioned earlier something about MSRSOI training, something like that. So usually we look at later in the year because county council does sponsor these two, and then if there is a request or need. In the
So
past
we'll
fiscal
roll it
year,
over
there
into
wasn't
next
one.
year's budget then?
Yeah, there wasn't. I don't believe we had one in the last fiscal year.
No, but we had
An
one
additional
set up
training.
in
We
this
had money,
budget.
but we didn't use it.
Okay.
There was not a request of any sort. You can also take your Brown Act and ethics trainings online through our memberships. Please contact me if you have questions. I often send out emails regarding that. And there is the requirement for the harassment prevention training as well. My understanding is that the county Human Resources Department is sponsoring another one, and I do have a call into that department to see who is eligible to attend. So that might be an option for the commissioners, and I will keep you informed. But I will reiterate that it is your individual responsibilities to make sure you're up to date on your trainings. I help you in whatever way I can, but like the 700 forms, it's all on you.
Is that training also available online?
I believe it is, and I have sent things in the future. With the new calendar year, there's probably new opportunities, so I will make note to send another email. Thanks, Tony.
Let us know when that is.
Is there any other business before the commission? I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned.
By the awesome order of the chair.
Your mics may still be on. Just hit the button if you would.